Let's be real here. When it comes to collaborations, pretty much anything that comes across your internet's browser has turned into some sort of fruitful idea at one point or another. Although I can't say the same thing about automotive collaborations over the past couple of decades. That said, about a decade ago, two of my favorite Japanese brands put their noggins together to create a lightweight rear-wheel drive boxer-powered sports car that to them would make an enthusiast dream feel a little bit closer and a lot more affordable at the time too. I wasn't exactly sure they were right, but now I would say my opinions have changed. As much as enthusiasts like myself love to gawk at the pornography of magazine articles full of the latest automotive technology and these crazy high horsepower machines, somehow things like that just don't get my emotions running as much as like what the new GR86 has done to me over the past few days. Because to me, there is nothing better for driving excitement than driving a lightweight rear-wheel drive supposedly 2+2 manual transmission sports coupe. And what Toyota and Subaru have put their heads together and created finally is the ultimate recipe for such a vehicle. I mean, I loved, or at least admired, the old Scion FRS, and I gained a little more respect when they started doing newer versions like the 86/the GT86 over in Europe, and of course its twin, the Subaru BRZ. But I felt like they were just lacking certain things. They didn't quite have that buzz that I was expecting from a fun little car like this. But now, I think those Japanese have finally cracked it. Because instead of being the butt-end joke of being so slow, what we have here is basically a non-turbocharged, slightly enlarged version of the same horizontally opposed flat-four boxer engine that you actually get in the Subaru WRX. But instead, when it's bolted to a rifle bolt of a 6-speed manual transmission connected to a rear-wheel drive axle with a Torsen limited slip differential in the middle, and of course, Gazoo Racing had to poke their noses in it and give it a factory performance dual exhaust. The end result is a mega amount of smiles per gallon. Oh, I freaking love this car! But you can't have all this speed and passion and performance without something at least to keep you pointed in the right direction. And Gazoo Racing did it again with their circuit-tuned electric power steering. It is perfect for this car. It is not lazy, the feedback is incredible, and the steering wheel just feels like it's got the right amount of weight to it. There's no play in it whatsoever. It's tight. It just feels like all you need to do is downshift, hit the right pedal, turn the wheel, point, shoot, go. That is what this car is all about. What's probably the weirdest thing about this car though is the noise that it makes. With a Subaru boxer engine up front, you would think that you're driving a low-slung two-door WRX. I mean, that's kind of the obvious thought, right? Because at lower RPMs or even just at idle, it sounds like a typical boxer. It's got that deep kind of voice caught in the throat kind of growl. But in this, it's almost like putting your foot on the gas pedal is just encouraging the monster to scream even more. Because all you need to do is drop a couple gears. Now you're suddenly at 4,500 RPMs and you're not even close to the red line. Oh, yes! Oh, I'm in love! Oh my God, that sounds so good. Oh. Unfortunately though, in the midst of all this excitement with my nerves being electrified to the nth degree, just rowing the gears and hearing that engine scream its heart out, there is one thing I must bring to everyone's attention, because if you are not used to a car that comes from the factory with a much firmer, more sportier tuned suspension like this, much less one with a short wheelbase like this car as well, you may not like using this thing as a daily driver. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not one to have a particularly sensitive stomach, but this car has shaken my lunch around quite a few times, especially just doing the daily drive to work, you know, a few miles back and forth. And that's partly due to the fact that the roads around Houston are absolutely atrocious, but on top of that, Gazoo Racing did tune this suspension a lot more so for the track than just going to the grocery store. Let's go one more down. Let's see what she'll do. Oh, guys and girls, whoever you are, oh my God, I wish you were here to experience that. Oh, that's so much fun. And the price tag for all this nerve electrifying lightweight performance, just a shade under $35,000, which in my mind actually makes it a bit of a bargain. Yes, we have a few little extra accessories on this one, plus the delivery processing and handling and all that, but keep in mind, this is the premium model that I'm driving right now. And on top of that, if per se you're the sort of person who dreams about, I don't know, a new Toyota Supra, this is 20 grand less than that. Oh man, I don't care that this car doesn't have all the horsepower in the world. I don't care that the suspension is rough, and I don't even care the fact that it's so low that it feels like my butt is dragging the concrete. I freaking love this thing. It was just only a matter of time until Toyota and Subaru finally cracked the formula that honestly I thought was never going to become a reality. But guys, they have done it, and I'll tell you, I could not be happier. Now, as much fun as I've had hooning this car around all over the place over the past few days, sometimes it's nice for one, enthusiast or not, to just pull over, step out, and just visually admire what you've been having so much fun driving around in. This particular car, the new GR86, is by far my favorite looking and my favorite driving version of any of those iterations that has ever come to market. Toyota and Subaru absolutely nailed it with this one, even more so by putting it in a very bright color with this Neptune paintwork. I mean, you could not miss this thing, even with its diminutive size. I mean, pretty much anywhere. And talking about the styling, I feel like as much as I love it, they sort of softened it down, but just enough to where it still has that sports car aggressiveness that you would expect. It still has things like the little fangs that come off the lower part of the bumper right underneath this huge angry looking grille versus the BRZ grille, which to me looks a little bit more like some kind of happy-go-lucky anime character. This one looks a little bit more angry, in your face. You've got the air skirts that go through the front corners of the bumper. Of course, they exit out right in front of the front wheels and then continue on down the side of the car. And when it comes to the softest part of the design, I think that goes to the headlights. A little more rounded, but they are now full LED everything, with one little surprise as well. You have the LED daytime running lights, LED turn signals, your LED main beam, but the surprise I got with this is that these headlights carry adaptive LED lighting. Now, while the design may have softened up just a hair over the years, at least in some eyes, what has not softened in the least with this car is Toyota and Subaru's initial philosophy that they have stuck to since first coming up with the idea to make this car at all, with a long hood in the front, a decent sized greenhouse in the middle, and a short little butt at the back. But what's even more amazing than that is in its current state right now, at 167.9 inches long, this car is a little over 4.5 inches shorter than a new Toyota Supra. So if you can't quite stretch to the Supra size, much less its enormous price tag, this is definitely something to take a look at. But speaking of size, one thing that caught my attention is the choice of wheels they have put on this car. I still can't believe they're as big as they are, with the matte black finish. Love the way that looks, especially in contrast with the bright blue. And these are 18-inch wheels, if you can believe that. They look so much smaller than that, but with the design that they have, let alone with the fact they're wrapped in 215/40 series Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tires, this is a serious combination that they have come up with, at least in terms of what you're rolling on. And just because you're paying nearly 35 grand for a small little car like this doesn't exactly mean you get all the highest end goodies in the world. It was surprising enough when I found out this thing had adaptive front lighting, but a lot of the extras you'll get on the GR86 specifically come from Gazoo Racing's own catalog. I mean, look at these secondary air skirts right here. They function exactly the same way as the ones here in the front, but they are accented by the gloss black GR air vent insert right here with the GR logo up top. I love the black, how it kind of separates itself from the blue a little bit. It's not too outlandish, if I'm honest. But one of the other surprises was the mirrors. Okay, they're painted black. That's cool, and they're not power folding, but I didn't expect that either. But they have this little light on the inside, which means you get blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alerts standard here on the GR86 Premium. I wasn't expecting a sunroof, and there isn't one on this one, so that's not a shocker either. But what is a bit of a shocker, or maybe not so much, is the advanced keyless access. Does the key fob look familiar? If it doesn't, it's the same one you'll find on a Subaru, Outback, or Crosstrek, except instead of a Subaru logo for the unlock button in the middle, you have the Toyota badge, but you have lock, trunk, panic, and the releasable key blade that comes out of the bottom. Same with the ubiquitous touch points used for locking and unlocking the car. It's unlocked right now, so if I want to lock it, you just touch the little rib pattern at the front. And if I want to unlock it, you just grab the door handle and get in as normal. Now, I'm not exactly what you would call a butt person when it comes to looking at the rear ends of most of today's vehicles. Sports cars or not, somehow their front ends just far exceed the rear ends in terms of the way they're styled. But somehow here on both the 86 and the BRZ together, I sort of like it a little bit more. Maybe it's because it's got that more cute kind of bubble butt personality. I don't know, that's just me. But all the same, they have the right amount of sportiness. This one here on the Premium, you've got the color-coded duckbill spoiler, you've got LED taillights and turn signals, you've got the Gazoo Racing badge next to the new Hatchi-Roku badge as well. But perhaps the best feature of all on the back end of this car specifically is the very much needed and still quite pricey Gazoo Racing Performance Dual Exhaust. And while this car is certainly nothing close to some kind of mid-engine supercar, it is far from the most practical vehicle at the same time. Now, you could use the trunk button on the key, or you could even use the little hidden button up here in the middle of the trunk. And once you open it up, yeah, not really even able to fit maybe even a decent sized suitcase in there. You're looking at around 6¼ cubic feet of cargo volume total back here. And just for perspective, my tripod is not exactly small, but nor is it the biggest one out there, and it stretches almost the entire width of the trunk floor itself. Not to mention the trunk floor actually sits up a good bit higher as well, thus detracting from the amount of usable space back here as well. So if you're looking to take this car on a trip, you better be able to use that back seat pretty well, but if not, you're kind of SOL on that one. Now, it's pretty clear that with the way this car looks, and more obviously with the way that it drives, that one can tell that the GR86 and its Subaru counterpart were both built to be pure-blooded and bred sports cars from the get-go. On the same note, however, you can kind of tell where the money was spent, because inside, although you have actually quite a bit of headroom, and even someone over 6 feet tall like myself can still fit comfortably in these leather and suede-bound, heavily bolstered seats, you realize that this is one of the more back-to-basics methods of driving enthusiasm here in 2023. Let me explain. You look right in front of you, the steering wheel is leather-wrapped, nice touch, but not the best thing in the world. You also have some of the smallest steering wheel buttons I've ever seen. And I don't have the biggest fingers of anyone I know, but there have been multiple occasions where I go to press one button and I end up hitting two at the same time. But just like the rest of the interior, everything is basic. You have Bluetooth, volume control, voice recognition. You even have the ubiquitous aero pad that controls a 7-inch thin film transistor gauge cluster. And in sort of a more basic nod back to Toyota and Subarus of previous, you also have a little stalk down here in the lower right that controls a basic cruise control. There's no dynamic radar, fancy schmancy anything. You just push the button, pull the stick down, and you set the speed. That's all there is to it. However, in the midst of all this basicness, there are a couple of pieces of modernness that I seem to enjoy a little bit more than I thought. The first of which is an 8-inch infotainment screen, which does not contain Toyota's newest highlights system. Instead, it contains a slightly altered version of the Subaru Starlink infotainment system, which is not a bad thing. I've messed around with that system quite a number of times in various models, and it comes with, you guessed it, all the basics. You have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which are wired in, so no real need to worry about any kind of funky wireless connectivity issues. It has a backup camera with no parking assist, but you don't really need that either. And in my favor, one of the things I've really enjoyed about this is that this car comes factory with an 8-speaker audio system and a built-in amplifier. And no lie, when you get the settings just right in this system, with as small as this cabin is, this system actually really punches pretty far above its weight. Yet, despite having a pretty good stereo system for what it is, and having a decent infotainment system, not to mention being a more driver-focused cabin overall, there are some things inside of this interior that just make me scratch my head a little bit more than usual. The first of which is that they've given this premium model a dual-zone climate control system. I mean, the cabin is so narrow and it's so short because there's really no back seat back there to speak of, even though they say it's a 2+2. Honestly, I think it's more like a 2 + 1/2 in a lot of cases. But having two separate temperature controls just doesn't make any sense to me. I do love the way they've styled some of the ancillaries, though. You've got a couple of different buttons hidden under the temperature controls, but then you have these silver piano key-like buttons here for other ancillaries for the climate control. Love that nice little styling touch as well. Same thing goes with the optional Gazoo Racing shift knob perched atop the shifter for the 6-speed manual here. I honestly didn't know what to think of it at first. It felt kind of weird in my hands, no homo. But at the same time, the more I started rowing the gears with this thing and just kind of feeling this car out in its entirety, I realized that it's not a bad option if you really want something that makes you feel, I guess, a little more involved than just having a manual transmission to begin with. What I'm also glad about, you can see it, a manual e-brake. No electronic gadgetry, no foot-mounted e-brake. It is right here. Rip the e-brake, kick the tail around. I mean, this is a proper drift missile after all. That said, you also have two traction control buttons. You have one that intermingles with the track mode, and then you just have one that turns off the traction control itself. Not quite sure what Toyota and Subaru were thinking there. You also have the heated seat controls. Again, an option I really don't care that much about. And you also have two USBs here in the cup holder area, along with an auxiliary input. I mean, are we still in 2004 here? I don't think I've seen one of those in a car like this in quite some time. And just like that, we are back at the apartment complex once again. And guys, I don't even know what else to say. One of the biggest adrenaline rushes I've had, not only in a very long time, but considering the price bracket of the new GR86, I mean, even just as a base model, this thing is an absolute riot. And if you guys have enjoyed coming along for the ride today, or perhaps you learned something about the GR86 or maybe even the BRZ in the process, give this video a thumbs up, and also while you're at it, hit the subscribe button down below, because trust me, opportunities like this do not present themselves all the time, and stuff like this wouldn't be possible without subscribers and viewers like yourselves and partnerships like Toyota USA. But in the end, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, everybody, and stay safe.